Hello, we are back in the Working with Excel chapter in practice file number 10. And in this file, we're just going to go over how to dynamically find the last row or column within a sheet. So, let's say you are in a situation where you want to add a filter to the columns A to D, but you don't know how many rows that there are. Well, you can use the .max row property of any sheet to find the max row with data. So if you were to have let's say if we were to open up this one, the max row in this sheet would be 11 because this is the last row that has data on it. But if we were to have data placed down in row 20, the max row would be 20 because it's the last or the furthest row down that has some kind of data within it. Doesn't matter if there's data missing between the rows like this. So let's go about that. Let's say we want to find the max row. So we can say max row is equal to our external workbook, whatever the active sheet is. And then it has this property called max row. Okay, so we could even print this out if we wanted to. See what that is. So you can see it's 21, and we are importing this library system file. So that looks like this. Okay, so row 21, that's how many rows there are in this example. So that makes sense. So then let's say we want to add a filter. .active .autofilter.ref. And we want to set a filter starting in A1, and we want to go over to column D, but we don't know how many rows there are. Well, we could now just put in max row. So that's going to say, hey, go from A1 to D, whatever the number of the max row is. In this case, it's 21. That should add a filter there. So we could, let's see, are we saving this? Not yet. Let me just add some code to save this. Let's say external workbook. Let's save this as example 10.xlsx. Run that. So cool. We can see that we now have a filter here. So if we wanted to sort this by author or something, we could very easily do that. So let's close that there. Let's say, if we jump back over here, let's say we don't actually know how many columns there are in a sheet. So here we didn't know how many rows have data. Let's say we don't know how many columns have data. Well, you could do the same thing and just say external workbook. Let's look at the active sheet. We can find the max column. Let's save that. Store it in a variable. Let's print it out. Max column. Oops. Let's run this, see what that is. So the max column is 4 here. So, and that makes sense because we have 4 columns with data in it. There's nothing past that. So that makes sense. The problem is we need a letter here. When we give it a reference, you give a reference using A1 colon, then the letter of a column, and then some kind of number there, right? So it's what row to go to. So openpyxl has this utils library, which comes with this function called getColumnLetter. And all this does is it translates a number to a letter. So let's say that we found what the max column was. We need to find the max column letter. So let's just use this getColumnLetter and give it that max column. And just so we can see what that actually is going to be. Let's print out the max column letter. And that is going to correspond to D. So column 4 means column D, essentially. So now that we have that translated to a letter, we can just go ahead and make this a little bit more dynamic even. So we can say active dot autofilter.ref is equal to So we want to start at A1, but we don't know where to go till. We are going to insert the max column letter as well as the max row. Oops, I accidentally ran my code. Okay, so there we go. We have that. And even if we were to comment this piece of code out like that, run our code, we're going to add that reference without knowing how many rows or columns there are. And if we were to jump back over here, let's look at example 10 again. We can see it still work. We didn't even mention column D in our code, but it just knew that's the last column. So it accurately gets that range there. So there are a bunch of other things you could do with openpyxl or openpyxl, however you want to pronounce it. But that should give you a good introductory overview of that. And if you are in my actual class, that gives you enough information to do everything you need to for the project that you have with openpyxl. So hopefully that helps. Thanks. See ya.